What's going on, y'all? Thanks for checking in the Khaliis Take. You know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell just so you can get the newest and the bonus content first. But hey, let's just go ahead and jump right in. You know, when I think about certain players on the Clippers, I definitely think about the core players. And of course, you always think about the superstar players, Kawhi and PG. But the core players definitely matter in regards to their development and how they play and how they, gel as a team going forward. Everybody has to be on one accord and everybody has to understand their role. And one player that I think that really understands his role for this Clippers team, that plays it to perfection, that really goes out there and gives everything he got and understands situational basketball and has a high IQ, is Luke Kennard. And to me, he's had a surprising NBA season, if you ask me, because, really, he only averaged maybe 12 points a game, but he's shooting 45% from the field. And not only that, his minutes went up, from last year to this year, in regards to, how he plays and his production and everything. And that could be mainly due to, of course, the fact of Kawhi Leonard and PG not being there for a lot or most of the season, or if all the season. But at the same time, he showed that he's more of a valuable piece than what the numbers say. He's one of those players where I feel like you don't really go by the numbers with him. You go by just production and when he's on the floor only. And when he's on the floor, he gives you, he averaged like 27 minutes, per game, for this season. And the production he gave the Clippers when he was on the floor was huge because, like I said, he only averaged 11 points and maybe 4 rebounds, somewhere in there. But shooting 45% from the field, 42% from three is nothing to sniff at. I mean, that's really good numbers. I mean, especially from a role player who they took a chance on and gave, I think, a $64 million contract to, coming from the Pistons, where a lot of people didn't know whether, he was a bust or, he was actually good enough to stay in the NBA, for a long period of time, or just one of the guys that's just filling up a roster spot. From what I see from this guy, he's definitely one of the players that they need to keep, unless they're going to get somebody that's a better three-point shooter and who's more engaged in, gameplay than he is, in which I don't think they're going to find nobody like that, especially not at his age. He's a young up-and-coming guy, and, for the Clippers, he definitely is a big name for them because there's been many instances this year specifically where I can point to and say he's hit game-winning shots. He's knocked down big shots to take leads, to change momentum in games. He's one of the best three-point shooters in the league. He was the only player from the Clippers to represent the Clippers in the All-Star game, which was huge because, you didn't think nobody from the Clippers would be anywhere near the All-Star game since Kawhi was out, PG, was out for a long period of time. And, just having somebody represented in the All-Star weekend was, a plus for Clippers Nation because, without Kawhi and PG, you just kind of don't expect nobody else to make an appearance. But he did, And he's a player that comes off the bench. He's a player that a lot of people looked at as, a nobody, to some degree. And now I feel like he has more of a name with the Clippers and more of a name with Clippers Nation because, and even more of a name with the NBA world a little bit because he is a really good three-point shooter. And what we saw when the Clippers were going through those stretches where they were down 25, 26 points and made all those comebacks, Luke Kennard was a big part of the reason why they made those comebacks. And he was a big part of the reason why they completed those comebacks. Because, see, a lot of times in games where you look at teams, you'll be like, okay, yeah, this team right here, they were down 26 points and they made a comeback in the game, but they didn't find a way to win. The other team still found a way to prevail, simply because a lot of times it takes so much energy trying to come back in a game rather than actually being up or, sustaining a lead or something like that. It takes so much energy coming back when you're down from so many points. To come back and complete the victory is even harder. So, you got to give credit where credit is due. The guy definitely, helped the Clippers out a lot and was a big part of their culture this year in being one of their leaders, besides Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum and those guys. But, Luke Kennard definitely stepped up in that, leadership role this year, because he took on a lot of onus, a lot of games when they were down, even games where Reggie Jackson didn't show up. There were games where Luke Kennard had 20 plus points and, knocking down threes at a high clip. So his value is very, very high for this Clippers team. And, I think he surprised a lot of people based upon coming from the Detroit Pistons, not knowing what he can bring to this team, not knowing how effective he would be or how valuable he would be. And he turned out to be one of the most valuable players on this team. And I feel like they definitely need to keep him, because he's definitely one of those value players that they can utilize in big moments, because they saw, especially this year, what he can do in big moments in situational basketball. Him coming off the bench, knocking down threes at a high clip, 42%, one of the best three-point shooters in the league, made it to an all-star weekend in the three-point contest because of his three-point shooting, and, kind of sort of, carving a niche for himself. And that's something that you always want to see with a player who's developing and who's, coming into the league, or a player who's been in the league a few years and not really found his footing yet. It's always good to see them kind of find their niche and, get going to where they're supposed to, so they can, earn their value as a player in the NBA and sustain the success that they have, or what success they're going to get going forward. And that's exactly what I think about Luke Kennard. And I feel like, he's a good locker room guy. A lot of people, everybody in the locker room, likes the guy, and he's definitely a hard worker, and he definitely understands, situational basketball. And I think that's what Ty Lue likes about him the most. His IQ is a lot higher than what people think it is, because, he not only can shoot threes, but he also can take people off the dribble and drive to the basket with a floater. And he's not a stagnant player is what I'm saying. He's not one of those 3-point shooters that's stiff, where they just stand in the corner and just shoot whenever they get the ball or something like that. Shout out to Nicholas Batum. This is no disrespect towards Nicholas Batum, but Batum is more of a stiff 3-point shooter. He stands still in one spot and just shoot the ball when he gets the opportunity, and he'll come off the dribble some, but he's not really mobile as he used to be. Shout out to Nicholas Batum. He's one of my favorite players on the Clippers, no doubt about that. Never would disrespect him at all. But I'm just saying, he's at the age he's at now, he's more of a stiff 3-point shooter, because he's not as mobile as he once was when he was like on Portland Trailblazers like 7-8 years ago or something like that. What I'm saying? It's only due to his age, but still, my point is, Luke Kennard is more mobile than what people think. He will take somebody off the dribble at times. He will go in there with the floater, and he doesn't mind taking contact in the paint. And he is a knockdown 3-point shooter at one of the highest percentages in the league. Because like I said, he's one of the top 3-point shooters in the league, and he helps the Clippers in that 3-point area. When you hear them say on TV the Clippers are one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league over the last 2 seasons, Luke Kennard is a part of that. He is a big part of the reason why. Because if you look at the inconsistency of Marcus Morris, you can't count him in there. I mean, when he shoots threes, he shoots at a pretty decent clip, but he's so inconsistent. You don't know whether you're going to get him shooting 3 for 5 or 5 for 7 from threes, from the field, each and every game. You don't know whether you're going to get that from Terrence Mann. You don't know whether you're going to get that from some other players on there, but you're going to get that from Luke Kennard most of the time. If Luke Kennard gets 5 3-pointers a game, most games he's going to hit at least 3 out of 5. I mean, most games. That's just because he's just that good of he's a good shooter. I mean, that's what he does. So, you got to respect his three, but I definitely think he's underrated, putting the ball on the floor and penetrating to the basket, and, coming up with his floater, or maybe even taking some contact in the paint. He's also a good free throw shooter as well. So you definitely got to, add that in there. Over, 87% somewhere in there. I think he was the last time I looked. He might be a little higher now before the season ended, but still, he's definitely a valuable piece and a valuable player for them. And I think he doesn't get his flowers enough about how good he is and everything, and or should I say how good he's been for the Clippers and everything, this season, without the superstardom help that they've been missing and that they really, really, valued so much and didn't have. He was one of those players that stepped up a lot. And I feel like we got to give him a lot of credit for stepping up, not knowing what he'd be able to bring to the Clippers when they signed him and gave him that decent contract. Everybody was kind of weary about it, but I mean, I feel like he's really living up to his contract that he's got, and I feel like he's, more than what the Clippers even probably thought he would be, and he's exceeding expectations. And I feel like, his presence really, helps the Clippers in a lot of little ways. See, I always say it's the intangibles, the little things that people have to pay attention to. In the play-in tournament, they didn't have Luke Kennard either game. If they had Luke Kennard in one of those games, they win. It's no doubt about it. They win one of those games. And he's not a superstar by any means, don't get me wrong, but he's one of those value players that gives the Clippers a different dynamic. He is one of the best three-point shooters in the league, and he could put the ball on the floor at times and surprise you. And on the defensive end, he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. And that's one of those type players that you need to win certain games. And I guarantee you, even without Kawhi Leonard or even without Paul George in one of those play-in tournament games, they would have won one of them games if they had Luke Kennard. I'm almost for certain by saying that they would have, because he's really that valuable, because he spreads the floor more. He makes their offense more versatile. And like I said, he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty on defense. But then on top of that, when every playoff game comes down to free throws, things like that, little things like that. And he's one of their best free throw shooters on the team. So it's like, his presence and what he brings to them, his 12 plus points a game. I mean, like I said, he's liable to have a 15 to 25 point game as well. Like he had several games this season against the Lakers, a lot of other games they had comebacks. So it's like, he's one of those gamer type players where he, if the game is big, he can come out there and he's liable to hit, if you give him 5 threes, he's liable to hit 5 for 5 from 3-point land. And if he does that, that changes the whole dynamic of the Clippers, even though they don't have, Paul George or, Kawhi Leonard. If you look at the last game against the Pelicans, they had a 12 or 13 point lead in the fourth quarter without somebody like a Luke Kennard. If they had Luke Kennard with his expertise shooting, they would have never gave that lead back up. That's just my opinion, and I believe it to be true. So my thing is, if I had to evaluate, Luke Kennard in his value to the team, what type of IQ he has and everything like that, and the way he played this season, with the superstars being down, I got to give him a B. If I had to give him a letter grade, I have to give him a B. And the only reason why I give him a B and not an A is because there's still time for improvement with Luke Kennard. The 11 points a game, 12 points a game he's scoring right now, shooting 44.9% from the field, which is about 45% if you round it out. He can bump that up, I believe. And I believe he will. I really do. I believe he will bump it up, because I believe, what he showed this year, he'll definitely get, maybe a couple more minutes, going into games and be more valuable, even more valuable going into the next season. So I think he can average somewhere around 14, maybe I'd say 14 to 16 points a game, coming off the bench. I think he can do that, and I think I think Ty Lue's going to put him in position to do that. So we could, possibly see him in another 3-point shootout next year too, because I think he's going to be a top of the 3-point shooter percentage wise, next season as well. So I definitely think he could make some noise there too. So I'm hoping to see, more from him, because I think he's definitely a valuable piece for them. And I think he's going to knock down some big shots, whether in the playoffs or regular season next year. I think he's going to do both. And I mean, because he's got it in him. We've seen him do that this year. He is, led comebacks, helped lead comebacks, been the leading scorer in several games along with Reggie Jackson coming off the bench. I mean, he's just definitely one of those players that they should value and honor, because he's developing right into the player they need him to be. And he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league while he's doing it. And he makes their offense so much more versatile, because with Nicholas Batum being in the corner, you got Luke Kennard in the opposite corner, and Kawhi and PG doing their thing. If they get trapped, they can kick it out to Luke Kennard. He's going to knock it down, or Nicholas Batum would knock it down. You see what I'm saying? So he makes their offense a little bit more versatile, especially when he puts the ball on the floor and kind of mixes it up a little bit, which he's starting to do more now. I've watched, the last month of the season before he went out with his hamstring injury, he was starting to put the ball on the floor a little bit more, not just shooting threes as much. And that's just showing you the development of a player and how he's developing mentally and everything on the floor to earn his value with the team and as just an NBA player in general. So you got to give him his flowers for that. So I'm going to give him a B. He had a really good season, surprising season, I think, in regards to having an impact on the team the way he did. And hopefully many more to go for him. But hey, that's my take on everything. You leave any comments in the comment section as always. Hey, Cali out.